Welcome to Dominate Your Day. I am sitting here with Kellan. Kellan and I have some things in common. One of them is we want to help people be their best self. And I came across Kellan. We came across him doing some research and saying, okay, this is a guy that's making a big difference. I think, Kellan, you wanted to reach 300, was it 300,000 people this year that you want
300
to reach?
million.
Oh, million. Oh my gosh, 300 million. That's a big one. So why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? And I'm going to let you pronounce your last name since you do it so much better than I can. But tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to go back into some story time.
I'm Kellan Fluckiger, and I only do one thing. My goal this year is to reach 300 million people and reach them with the message of what Dana just talked about, the possibility of creating your own life. You're not a victim unless you choose to be. So the message of sovereignty and your ability to create your life, the methods to make that happen so that it's not just a message, and then coaching and other work so that you become the master. So mastery of that. And that's all I really do. I appear on shows, I have coaching clients and that sort of thing. But my singular focus is how do I reach people and elevate them so they understand their divinity, their capability, their possibility, those things that really are in all of us, but that we ignore a lot.
And Kellan, you had a pivotal moment in your life. Will you take us back to that time? Was it 2006, 2007, around then?
Yeah, it was in August of 2007. So a little background will help. I was raised in a family that was very religious, fanatically so, with discipline that today would be felony child abuse. And it was all in the name of, do what's right. And it left me feeling like I was never going to be good enough. And so I struggled silently because, of course, you didn't talk about those things in those days, with depression, feeling I wasn't good enough and never would be. And so the consequence of that was I sort of built and sabotaged my life over and over again. I don't deserve it. I created career success and relationship success and wrecked it over and over again. So I rode this roller coaster of self-sabotage. In August of 2007, here's the situation. I am single again for the third time. 4 of my 10 children are living with me as a single dad. I am a $3,000 a week cocaine addict, and I was making enough money that none of that mattered. I came home from work except it was a disaster of a life. Oh, and before this happened, 2 weeks earlier, I'd made my second suicide attempt because I hated myself so badly. I came home from work on a Friday night in August, and I was getting ready to go out party, and suddenly I had this urge to turn on the television. Now, that doesn't sound like anything, except I didn't watch TV. And the funny part was I picked up the remote and looked at it and went, ooh, I don't know how to turn this on. I had bought the big cool stuff for the kids and their friends because we were the party house. And so I asked my daughter, and she punched some buttons and threw the remote at me, dipweed dad. And it landed on a program I'd never heard of, a reality TV show called Intervention, which is a reality show about people that stage interventions for busted loved ones. The protagonist was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched my life for about 10 minutes, and I said, yeah, I'm not watching this crap. So I turned it off and went and did some stuff for 15, 20 minutes and was getting ready to, go party. And I just had this irresistible urge, had to turn the TV back on. So this time I knew how. And that program started over. And no, we didn't have a DVR, a recording device. And no, it wasn't on the schedule. And no, it can't do that. I understand. But it did. And I'm like, holy crap. So I watched the program and it went badly. The guy yelled at his family, stomped out of the intervention and swore he didn't have a problem and all that kind of stuff. What happened was it freaked me out. So instead of going out to party, I went to bed. And when I went to
Mm,
bed, I went to hell. And
mm.
what I mean by that is I went somewhere. It was out of body, it felt like. And I was in a big room, theater-like thing, and I could see scenes on the stage, and they were all scenes from my life. And they were all focused on suffering, the suffering that had been inflicted on me as a kid growing up, and then the suffering I had inflicted on everybody else as a lousy partner, a lousy dad, a drug addict, a pathological liar, and all the stuff that was part of my life. And the experience watching it was so intense, I couldn't I could hardly breathe. It was just
Mm.
tense. And after a very long time, a voice over my left shoulder said very clearly, "It is enough." I woke up and I was disoriented for three reasons. One, I was upside down and backwards in bed. Two, the bedclothes were completely soaked, reflective of the intensity of the experience. And three, the sun was shining in the windows and the windows faced west. So I got up and realized it was 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere 18 hours.
Mm.
And I realized I'd been invited to change. I had no idea what to do, who to talk to, how to do anything, like none. But I knew one thing. I said, "Well, I'm done." So I threw away $1,000 worth of drugs that I had laying around because I always did, and I quit cold turkey that day. Now that got me sober, but it didn't do anything about how I got there because I'd never gotten any help with mental illness and my own opinion of myself and all the rest. So, but God wasn't done, right? So on Monday, I went back to work, and in the position, even though I knew I had to like change everything, I changed one thing. I got sober, right? So in the position I had, I used to get free stuff, like free tickets to this. I made decisions that affected other companies, sometimes to the tune of billions of dollars. So I got lots of be nice to Kellan stuff. Not bribes, but expensive bottles of this wine and liquor and tickets to box seats to that. One of the things I got was a pair of tickets to a Yo-Yo Ma concert. Now, if you know classical music, you know who that is, and if you don't, you don't. But in the classical world, ah, that's like,
Mm.
and I'm, oh wow, I was excited, but I didn't want to waste this other ticket. It's like I don't have anybody to take, so I asked in the groups that I managed who likes classical music. And there was a woman in one of the groups who said, "Well, I do." I said, "Have I ever given you anything before?" Because I gave away stuff all the time. And she said, "No." I said, "Okay, fine. See you there." So I gave her the ticket, and it was in 2 or 3 weeks, and the day of the concert came, and so as of the concert, I'm now 2.5 weeks stone cold sober. Right. So the concert was spectacular. It was amazing, and of course the seats were together, but we hadn't come together. And about halfway through the show, I had this feeling come over me that I recognized from a couple of weeks before, and this voice said to me, "You need to marry this woman." And
Oh my goodness.
I said, "You are flippin' insane." I said, "I have screwed that up 3 times. I have no idea how to do this. No, that is not happening." So later that night, we were backstage because they were $1,000 tickets, backstage passes and tickets to the reception and all this stuff. We're backstage, and the voice came back and said, "Yeah, comma, and you need to tell her tonight." And so I went nuts, and I thought, well, there's a couple of problems here. A lot
Mm.
louder than that in my mind. I said, first of all, I actually don't know her well enough to know whether or not she's in a relationship. Like, I don't know that. And the second thing is she could have me like arrested or something for
Mm.
harassment or whatever, right? No, we can't do that. But you don't win those arguments. So I did, as awkward as it was, and it went about like you would have expected. Are you insane? And she left. But the good thing was she didn't have a relationship, which I didn't know, and the other good thing was she didn't call the cops or HR or whatever, right? So
Mhm.
about 3 more weeks went by, and she had her own set of experiences, and about 3 or so weeks after the concert, I walked away from millions of dollars of contracts, and she resigned her entire career, and we walked off into the sunset together, and last month, we celebrated our 17th wedding anniversary. Now,
Wow.
the reason that's so crazy, I mean, the story is crazy, but she was literally the angel who was sent and had agreed to help me learn how to be a person, learn how to tell the truth, learn how to have a friend, learn how to be a friend, learn all the things I'd never learned in my own life, even though I'd had 3 failed marriages. And she is today my business partner and invincible person.
Mm.
And here's the fun part, you know what? Her name is Joy. Like,
Oh,
you
wow.
can't make this stuff up, right? So that
Mm.
was my wake-up call. It didn't do any of the work of getting sober or addressing my mental illness or any of that, but it finally was a wake-up call loud enough that I said I'm going, and I don't know how much broken glass I've got to crawl over, and I don't know how to do any of this, but I'm going. So that was the
Mm.
beginning in August, September, and October, the 3 events in, 2007, and we've been on this path ever since. And since then, I've written 20 books. I have created a coaching practice around the world. I have my mission now of 300 million people, and I live today a life I never even could have imagined in any of my earlier incarnations.
Well, first of all, thank you, Kellan. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing your heart. Um, I think today you and I are speaking to those people out there in the workplace. You were in the workplace. You were in the go-go days, right? You had everything going for
I
you.
did. I was C-suite positions. I was making money, and I was a big shot in
Yeah.
my industry, but behind the scenes, my life was an absolute disaster. Burned out,
And
unfulfilled, didn't care, that thing.
it's something that we're seeing all the time and that it's been going on for generations, but it's gotten worse, I think, as we get into more channels for us to compare ourselves to and look at other people to. But it's all about living authentically. And so Joy helped you find yourself, but what else did you do to help dig out of old patterns and things that you had carried with you from childhood?
Well, I had the
Is
first thing I had to do is admit that I needed
that
help, which I hadn't done in my whole life. So I had to go, and Joy helped me with that. She helped me find counselors and people to go talk to, and
absolutely.
then, I burned through many of them because at first I didn't even know how to talk to one. I didn't know how to tell the truth. I didn't know how to be vulnerable, and so I had to learn all those things. I got into, some 12-step programs to make sure I stayed sober, and saw a lot of shrinks to address things because I lived with this idea that my parents, because they were religious based, it was my mom mainly, but was right. And so everything was right. And yeah, what she did was excessive and wrong, but I had the idea that I had to prove something. And it took me 3 or 4 years of hard work, 8, 9, 10, to get to the place where I could own my life. So the digging out is exactly right. There were no shortcuts. There
Mhm.
was nothing easy about it. I had to learn to tell the truth, to analyze my own self, to adopt and learn new behavior patterns. And I started from the bottom of the canyon. I always say there was ever a poster child for somebody that should have been left at the bottom of the canyon, that was me. And even in that circumstance, the invitation was issued. So I had to work for several years to get uh, to begin to own my own life and to realize I had both permission and obligation to create what I wanted to create in the world.
And then is that when you came up with that you wanna help people do what they don't think they can do? Is that where that was birthed? Where was that birthed?
Somewhere, what happened is I did the work on myself. I mean, the first thing was I gotta get healthy, and as I did that, it became obvious to me, I knew lots of people that used to be or were like I was, unfulfilled,
Mhm,
doing what they thought they were supposed to do, living somebody else's life, sometimes with terrible, numbing things, alcohol or drugs, and sometimes not, but empty. And so I
mhm,
realized, this process I've been going through and the results and stuff, I could really help some folks. And then the desire that we all have. I'm like, all of us have the
mhm.
desire to help others. We're born that way. We're
Absolutely.
built to love and serve each other. So that woke up and it's like, I could really do this. I could help people with their struggles and realize the things that I'm learning. And so two things happened. One, I said to myself, well, what is that? Gee, I think that's coaching or something. And two, I
Mhm,
started writing books that documented my own life and journey and the things I learned and processes. I wrote a book on forgiveness because that played a pivotal role, both of
mhm,
myself and of others, and understanding it and so forth. I wrote a book called Walking Without Fear. All of them were just reflective of my own experiences and journey in mastering things that had destroyed me before. So that gradually came to be in the years, those years as I began to heal more, then my vision turned outward and began to explore what that looked like. And, I went and bought a lot of courses and things to figure out what that looked like and began to create both books and coaching practice.
So here you are, 17 years later.
Mhm.
You enjoy you're still together. We're always in recovery, no matter what it is, right? I mean, you always are working on yourself. And so, what are the lessons that you have learned, Killen, over these 17 years? If you could say, what are your top 5 lessons from your books, from your teaching, from your coaching? What would you say those are?
So I'll just start listing them, and maybe we'll get to 5, and maybe we won't. We'll see.
Okay.
Number 1 is, look, it doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's there's no such thing as too late. I was 52 when this started. So, 2007 was the year I turned 52. And from there, I have built this 17 years now, and I live a life today I call it the ultimate life, a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. So, number 1, it doesn't matter where you've been. It's never too late to matter
Mhm.
and have a big impact if you choose and go down that road. So that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is don't wait as long as I did to figure out you need help. You weren't designed to do this alone. And the idea that somehow you're going to do this only guarantees that either you'll fail or you'll take forever. And so getting the help I needed was one of the big hurdles for me. And, you know, I've hired all kinds of programs and coaches and stuff over the years, and I'm grateful for all of it. Some of them work better than others, and no reflection on any program. It's just the way things are. So that's the second one is don't wait, get the help you need. I think the third one is you, each one of you have a purpose, a mission, a thing that you are called to do, good at, powerful at. Maybe it's in the workplace. Maybe it's to be a light and a leader. Maybe it's to start a business. Maybe it's to do whatever, but you have it and you can find it. So that feeling that we have, gee, I wonder what my purpose is. That's like real. It's built
Mhm.
into us and it's true. So you have that. That would be the third one. 3A would be it isn't going to come to you in an Amazon box. You're not
Yeah.
going to find it on a safari. You're not going to dig it up in the yard. You're going to choose. You're going to
Mhm.
choose based on your life experience, based on your feelings, based on your strengths, the skills you've learned, the gifts that you naturally have. You're going to weave those together in your skills, your gifts, and your life experience, and then you're going to choose that purpose. And going into that, you'll refine it and adjust it. But that's how you'll find it. So that's number 3. Number 4 is there are there is a large group. There are many people who need to hear your voice.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is people say to me all the time, well, I shouldn't write that book. There's 50 million of them out there. I shouldn't create that program. Who am I to whatever? And the answer is really simple. There are people that hear my voice and not others. There are people that hear others' voices
Mhm.
and not mine. So you matter. Your voice is necessary. You can choose not to, but there are people waiting who will resonate with your message, your story, your method, your process, your journey that will feel that more strongly than anyone else. And the last one that I'll do because that makes 5 even though there's probably lots more. One of the most important things I've learned is this all starts from learning to love yourself.
Mhm.
We live in a world of comparison. We live in a world of excuse me, being drowned in what others think. And the truth is, self love is the critical starting point. You cannot love another more than you love yourself. You can pretend, but it's not real. And the degree to which you love yourself really with your mistakes and everything else, truly love yourself and accept yourself as a work in progress, is the degree to which you'll be able to influence and bless the lives of others.
Wow. Okay. I want to unpack a couple things. Thank you for those. I think those were really powerful. One thing I want to unpack is your number 3A, that you're going to choose what you becomes your purpose. And I want to talk about that just for a second because I think there's yearnings that we have that God's put in us. He's given us these gifts, right? Our
Mhm.
talents. So how do you guide your people, your followers, your coachees as you're helping them choose?
So I have a process, I call it a triple helix, and I want you to think of it as a DNA strand that has 3 strands instead of 2, and or a big marine rope, one of those ropes that
Mhm.
has yellow and blue and white, and it holds boats, those great big nylon ropes. The 3 strands are you have a set of skills. It's probably what you've been selling in the marketplace. Maybe you're a lawyer, maybe you are a marketer, maybe you are an architect, maybe you are an artist. Set of skills that you've learned that you're good at. You have that. Most people, they end up selling those in the marketplace, and that's their job. And most people are not happy in their jobs. And the reason is really simple because your skills is only one of 3 things that you have, and it's the least important. So
Mhm.
that's why it's that not that fulfilling. Strand number 2 is your natural gifts. Every person was born with and brought to this world a set of gifts. Some are obvious,
Mhm.
like maybe someone's talented in music or sports or art or whatever. Most of them are energetic or subtle, the ability to listen, the ability to know just what to say, the ability to make some people feel safe. All those kinds of other gifts are powerful and important. And that list of gifts that you have is a critical second element. So you can imagine if I enhance a skill that I've learned, either at school or trade school, doesn't matter. I've got a skill and I enhance it with these gifts and I make it more important, more powerful. You can see that's obviously more effective, more powerful, and also worth more money. The third thing that we all have is our life experience. A life experience is the basket in which all of this unfolds. And
Mm.
unfortunately, most of the big life experiences we have are the sucky ones, the betrayals, the bankruptcy, the illnesses, the stuff that happened to us that hurt. And those things either ruin us or they refine us, and sometimes both. Sometimes they ruin us for a minute or a year or a decade, and we can later let them refine us. And the things that we learn from those life experiences is the third element of that rope. So if I take people through a process to look at their skills, look at their gifts, and then look at what they've learned from their life experience and weave those together, it isn't difficult to find a thing or 2 or 3 that calls to you that you want to be of service with. And I've never met or had a conversation with somebody where we couldn't find the thing or 2 or 3 that make a lot of sense and a way to use them to serve and to make money, to make a living, to have the kind of prosperity you want. So that's the process, is to look at those 3 things and then make a decision based on what you want to offer. And then you can business design is how to offer it and a bunch of other things. Excuse me.
Right. Well, Kellen, I appreciate that because I think the word choose is real important there. Everybody thinks, oh, I can only do this because everybody's told me this is who I am. Or what I like to use, as you talked about with strengths, is understand my strengths and which of them have I not even been using, which ones need to fire up to help me
Mhm.
get to one of those other parts of the helix. The third thing I want to ask you about of these five, or the second thing I want to ask you about of these five, is you said it all starts from self love. So, most of us have had experiences probably in childhood that caused us to create a pattern that we've had our whole life and we didn't know it until we have one of these incidents or something happens and we have to go back and do that deep work. Where does this self-love start right now? And I was telling you in the green room, I have somebody that I've been talking to, and she said, I just want to find her talking about herself and finding that self-love you're talking about. So where does that start? Where do you find that starts with your clients, with your people that you interact with?
I find that it's a mix, and forgiveness is woven in there too. Because from the
Absolutely.
cradle, we've been, grades and competitions and sports and upbringing and childhood experiences and the whole pile of things have beat into us the idea that we're not enough, that we're somehow inadequate in some or many ways. That's not true, but that is the framework of the world that we live in. So there's two parts. One is the forgiveness, because you're going to have a pile of perceived inadequacies, things that you feel bad about yourself, or anger that you're holding against somebody else, and or anger you're holding against yourself for things you did or didn't do. And self-love, forgiveness, first of all, is a choice to no longer let events of the past have power in the present, because no amount of guilt that you carry about something you did or didn't do is going to change what happened. Now, you can do what you can to make amends, and you can change who you are so you're not that person anymore. And that's it. And if you still continue to carry a bunch of crap, all that does is dampen your light today. So I
Mhm,
would argue you owe it to me to forgive yourself so I can see your light. Because I
mhm,
don't want to see half of you. I don't want to see a dark version of dampness that you're covering up. I want to see your brightest self. So forgiveness is an important piece, and there's some exercises. That's why I wrote a book on forgiveness, because I had so much work to do in that area.
mhm,
The other thing I have people do, which proves to be surprisingly hard, is to start a simple exercise. I call it the mirror work, which is to look in the mirror every day, and for starting with 1 minute and then three, to just look deeply in your own eyes and say, I love you. And
mhm.
most people can't do that. Or if they do, it's fake, or they look away, or they substitute other words. I had a client tell me once, after he did it for a week, he said, man, I'd rather put my hand in a meat grinder than
Uh,
do that, because it felt so inauthentic. And this, coincides with forgiveness and our ability to recognize and pardon, as it were, our humanness. And that doesn't mean ignore things you need to fix. If you've done some things that you can fix, go fix them. But I'm talking about the residual um, anguish, shame, anger, depending on
mhm,
which way it goes, serves no one. So a mirror exercise, I have people notice. I was just talking to a client earlier today, and in the language I was using, it was clear. It stopped him. Say that's a judgment. You're creating a judgment there of yourself, and that, like this and this and this we talked about. And he's like, "Yeah, you're right. That is a judgment." I said, "Okay, so that's fine. That's a habit. So what would you need to have, or who'd you need to be to just forgive that judgment and allow you to be human for judging yourself inadequate and so forth." So it's work. I call it PD push-ups, personal development push-ups. It's a process. It isn't going to happen overnight. You're not going to read a book and go to some place and have some grand epiphany. If you've learned these habits over decades, it's not going to take decades, but it's going to take some focused work to undo them and create new ones. So self love is critical. It is non negotiable. I have people start there, because I don't care if people come, they want to make more money. I have my business, I need this and that. And it's like, okay, we'll dive right in. We'll talk about your P&L and your sales process and your hiring and your HR and everything else. And it becomes very clear very quickly as we go through the problems that who they are being affects all that dramatically. And if they showed up to each of those situations differently, they would be faster and easier and more effectively solved.
it's really about what you're talking about here is really just unveiling that authentic person inside of them. I loved how you talked about, you're only half of yourself, get that other half out there. And forgiveness is such a huge subject. I think so many times we're focused on who we need to forgive, or we haven't forgiven ourselves, like you talked about. And so I appreciate you bringing that up as well. So as we talk about 2025 and where you're going, we're in early 25 right now. You mentioned just 300 million people. How? Why? What is that about?
So I started a few years ago with the goal of 10 million. I don't know why I picked that number. And because my year starts October 14th, oh, that's part of the story. So the reason my year starts October 14th is that's Joy's birthday. So
Oh.
that's when New Year's is for me. So I started with 10 million that year, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just started doing everything I could to reach people with the message and affirmation and opportunities. And some of the things I do is I help people write their own books and create their own stories and products and coaching programs, as well as run their businesses, all that stuff. But anyway, near the end of that year, and it was like September or something, I was on somebody's show. We were on there for an hour, and at the end of the hour, there were two hosts, and both of them were emotional. And they said, "You need a bigger number." And I said, "Okay, why is that?" "Well, we've been on with you for 1 hour, and you have changed." One of them said, "You've changed my life. And I'm going to talk to at least 1,000 people this week. So you need a bigger number." So the year ended, and I set a goal of 50 million. And we did the best we could to track that. And it turned out that based on the best estimates we could of audience size, we reached about 75 that year, 75 million. So then we set last year a goal of 250, and I don't think we reached that. Best estimates, we got about 100 and a quarter. So I didn't double it again. We made it 300 this year, starting in October, and I'm doing everything I can. I have people on my shows, LA Talk Radio and podcast. I appear on these shows. I speak at a lot of events. I'm going next month to Florida to speak at an event, and the message is the same. I don't ever worry about selling anything. I actually don't need to, because when I help people understand who they are, they want to come. They come and they want me to help them tell their life story, create their products, write their books, build their business because they feel and experience that truth. And so that's where the number came from. And my ability to count it is clumsy at best. I never expected to get 300 million emails saying, "You helped me," but we're doing the best we can.
And I think what I'm hearing, what the message that's coming out for me, and I hope for our listeners, is when you're living in authenticity, the sky's the limit. You can do so much because you're coming from a place that's uniquely you. You're not trying to be something else you're not, and you're just bringing it out. And you're, like you said, I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just here to serve. And I think that is a huge, huge message as we get ready to close out, Kellan, anything that I haven't asked you or that's coming up for you right now that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah. I want to leave each one of you that are listening with two things. The first is I want to express gratitude and honor for my host here. Putting on a podcast is a labor of love, and it takes a lot of work and dedication. So bless your heart for edifying, serving, and loving these people. Number
Mm,
two is each of you listeners. You've heard this kind of language 50 times or 100 times or 1,000 times, and none of it's going to matter unless you make a choice to let it into your heart and say, "Yeah, that means me. I
mm,
am a divine being. I
mm,
have this capability, and it really doesn't matter what has failed before or where I've been." So the message I would leave you with is, don't just hear this. Make a choice at the beginning of 2025 to change directions, to
mm,
elevate your eyes to what is possible. Lift your eyes, lift your heart, rise up, because you matter. And
mm.
it will only happen if you go make it happen. So that's what I would leave.
And I love that. It's your choice, audience, to go do this and to make a difference in your life or to just live another year of reacting to things instead of designing your life. And I think that's all about what we're both about. So, Killen, how can people reach you if they want to reach out to you and learn more about what you do?
So when you have a weird name like Kellan Fluckiger, you can't
Yes.
hide. I have
Right.
my books are on Amazon, so look up Amazon and just Kellan Fluckiger. I'm on
Okay.
socials. I own my website, KellanFluckiger.com. Nobody else wanted it. I only had to pay $2 for it, so it wasn't like I had to buy it from somebody.
There you go.
I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and a number of places. I have a challenge to help people write books starting at the end of February. There's a URL you can go to find out all kinds of stuff. It's called KellanFluckigerMedia.com. It gives you links to the podcast and to books and different things to find out what's going on. So KellanFluckigerMedia.com. And I love talking to people. I love uh, exploring with you your own possibilities. So if you feel inclined, reach out and let's chat and see what we can create.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Killen. Thank you for sharing your heart, for sharing your voice, and for sharing your journey and how now you've served. And I bet you'll get those 300 million people this year.
No
So
question.
I'm betting on it that you're going to do it. You're going to do it. So thank you for being here and thank you for being with our group today. We're so excited to have you here.
You're welcome. And again, thank you for your gracious hosting and for the work that you're doing.
Appreciate it.